The scene between Ava and Zoey begins in the quiet tension of a mother's exhaustion, a woman stretched thin between her professional life, her guilt over a recent divorce, and her growing fear that she is losing her daughter, and unfolds into an encounter that lays bare the deep, complex emotional terrain between women who find solace, admiration, and recognition in each other when life structures have failed them. Ava, juggling work calls and worry, represents the woman who has spent so long performing composure that she barely remembers what genuine connection feels like. Zoey, meanwhile, carries the restless urgency of youth and concern, channeling her affection for Ava's daughter into a need to repair what feels broken, not realizing she is also drawn to Ava's calm, her strength, her vulnerability. When Zoey appears at the door, asking to talk about Emily, the visit feels simple at first, a concerned friend coming to speak with a parent. But beneath the politeness, the dialogue pulses with something both tender and destabilizing. Two women reaching for comfort in a space that neither fully understands yet both clearly need. Through a queer, emotionally grounded lens, this encounter becomes more than a conversation about a troubled teenager. It becomes an unspoken confession about longing, the ache of recognition, and the blurred boundaries between care and desire that many queer women know intimately. What draws Zoey to Ava is not seduction but safety, the gravity of a woman who listens, who sees her, who radiates a maternal steadiness Zoey may be missing elsewhere. And what draws Ava toward Zoey, even as she fights to maintain the roles of adult and authority, is the rare experience of being seen without expectation, of being admired, not for what she does, but for who she is beneath the stress and guilt. Their dialogue, full of hesitations and quiet empathy, captures the subtle ways women learn to love within the margins society allows. Through concern, through shared pain, through gestures that almost say what words cannot. When Ava admits feeling guilty about the divorce, about failing her daughter, she is articulating the guilt that so many women carry, the impossible expectation to nurture without rest, to sustain others even when they are unraveling. Zoey's reassurance that staying married would have meant sacrificing her own happiness is the kind of emotional labor younger women often perform for their elders, flipping the roles society assigns. In that moment, Zoey becomes the caretaker, the one who holds space for Ava's weariness. And in doing so, their relationship shifts from a simple dynamic of concern for Emily to something more intimate, a mutual recognition of loneliness and the yearning to be understood. This is where the scene begins to resonate deeply with queer audiences, particularly women who have lived within the boundaries of propriety, but have felt something stirring beneath them, a connection that can't be easily categorized, a tenderness that feels both forbidden and utterly natural. The moment Zoey tells Ava, "You're really great, I look up to you a lot," lands with aching sincerity because it encapsulates how queer affection often begins, not through bold declarations but through reverence, admiration, the safety of coded language. For many LGBTQ+ women, these are the spaces where love first breathes. In admiration disguised as gratitude, in compliments that tremble with feeling, in pauses that stretch too long because neither knows how to proceed without breaking the illusion of normalcy. Ava's response, a mixture of apology, hesitation, and emotional confusion, reflects the weight of conditioning that teaches women to fear intimacy with one another, to keep their affection within the realm of the permissible. Yet the scene refuses to sensationalize this tension. Instead, it allows the women's interaction to exist in emotional truth, an encounter between two people yearning for connection in a world that keeps telling them not to need it. Zoey's nervous energy, her overstepping curiosity, even her apology, "I'm sorry," become less about impropriety and more about the fear of being too much. A feeling queer women know well, the anxiety of revealing oneself and being met with rejection, the heartbreak of mistaking emotional safety for permission to be authentic. Ava's quiet discomfort is equally poignant. She is not recoiling from Zoey out of moral panic but out of self-protection, because being seen, truly seen, by another woman threatens to unravel the identity she has fought to hold together. Her life, structured by performance, the perfect planner, the responsible mother, the composed divorcee, suddenly feels transparent under Zoey's gaze. It is not the fear of scandal that flickers across her face, but the deeper fear of intimacy, of losing the mask that has kept her functioning. Through this lens, the scene becomes a mirror for how many women, queer or not, navigate the tension between emotional hunger and self-preservation. The queerness here lies not in any explicit gesture but in the emotional architecture of the scene, the way both women navigate desire not as something erotic but as something deeply human, as the need to be known, to find home in another's empathy. For queer women watching, this moment speaks to the experience of being drawn to someone of the same gender, not because of rebellion or fantasy, but because that person awakens a truth long buried, the truth of wanting to be close, to be safe, to be loved without fear. Society's discomfort with scenes like this stems precisely from that honesty. When women connect beyond the boundaries of expectation, when they reach for each other without asking permission, it exposes how fragile heteronormative order really is. The discomfort persists because women's love for each other, in any form, threatens systems built on emotional dependence on men. The idea that a woman might find fulfillment, recognition, or even quiet transcendence in another woman disrupts the patriarchal script that defines women's worth by their service to others. Thus, moments like Ava and Zoey's are often misread, sexualized, dismissed, or moralized, rather than understood for what they are, the flowering of authentic emotion in a landscape that has taught women to repress it. In Ava's restrained responses and Zoey's unguarded warmth, viewers can see the dual realities of queer womanhood, the yearning to express and the fear of consequence, the hope for connection and the reflex to retreat. Their encounter dramatizes the very real psychological choreography queer people perform daily, testing the boundaries of intimacy, reading cues, protecting oneself, while still daring to reach out. Ava embodies the generation of women who learn to translate emotional honesty into politeness, while Zoey embodies the new language of directness, earnest, searching, still learning how to navigate rejection. Their meeting point, then, becomes symbolic of a larger cultural handoff, the passing of emotional courage from one woman to another, the moment when repression meets recognition. What makes the scene powerful is that it never collapses into spectacle. Instead, it lingers in ambiguity where most real human emotion lives. Queer viewers will recognize in Zoey's trembling apology the familiar ache of having said too much, of showing care that the world insists must be hidden. Women in general will recognize Ava's exhaustion, the kind that comes from holding too many roles, from being both strong and sensitive, from loving others while forgetting how to let herself be loved. Together, they enact a quiet rebellion against invisibility. Their conversation about Emily may appear to be about saving someone else, but symbolically it becomes about saving themselves, about confronting the parts of their own hearts that have gone unattended. The intervention they speak of is, in a sense, happening between them. An intervention against emotional numbness, against silence, against the self-denial women are taught to perform. When Ava finally softens, when her defensiveness gives way to something gentler, the scene transcends its literal context and becomes a meditation on the courage it takes to allow intimacy to exist without justification. That is the queer power of this moment, not eroticism, but authenticity. It asks viewers, especially women and LGBTQ+ audiences, to see love as something that doesn't need a label to be real. It insists that tenderness between women, whether maternal, platonic, or romantic, is sacred, not suspect. And it invites a reimagining of how women can inhabit closeness without shame, without the need to fit into definitions designed by others. The quiet apology at the end, "I'm sorry," lands like a whisper of all the apologies women have ever given for simply feeling too much, for crying, for caring, for wanting. But within that apology is also a kind of freedom, the acknowledgement that feeling deeply is not a flaw but proof of being alive. Through Ava and Zoey, the film holds a mirror to its audience, asking, what would it mean if women stopped apologizing for their love? What if our tenderness was not seen as weakness but as truth? For queer viewers, this question is not rhetorical. It is the heartbeat of lived experience. In this single scene, between the worry, the guilt, and the halting words, lies a portrait of connection as rebellion, of empathy as courage, and of visibility as liberation. Ava and Zoey's exchange reminds us that the most radical act a woman can commit, still, even now, is to let herself be known by another woman and to meet that gaze without fear,